What makes up a world-class Microsoft practice in today's ever-evolving landscape between AI and security? Today I sit down with Nathan Taylor, who's the SVP of the Microsoft Center of Excellence at SourcePass. Nathan's been an industry expert for some years now, very much a thought leader in our space, but he's helped hundreds, if not thousands of organizations maximize their investment in Microsoft 365 while increasing their security and reducing their risk. We unpack a lot of great topics today, including what makes up a Microsoft Center of Excellence at an MSP, some of the common security gaps he sees in most tenants that every MSP and IT leader should know, and why focusing in on the basics is often the biggest opportunity to create impact. So let's go ahead and dive into this wide-ranging conversation with Nathan Taylor from SourcePass.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Cloud Capsule Partner Spotlight. My name is Daniel Johnson. I'm the Global Channel Chief for Cloud Capsule. And as always, joined by our CEO and Microsoft MVP, Nick Ross.
Hey, guys.
And we're really pleased to have Nathan Taylor from SourcePass and the Microsoft Center of Excellence with us. Nathan, I'll let you kind of do the full intro and explain where you're coming from and kind of where we've been.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be part of this. Love the product, so it's going to be a lot of fun to chat about it. My name is Nathan Taylor. I'm the SVP at the SourcePass Center of Excellence for Microsoft. SourcePass is a large MSP spread all over the U.S. with thousands of customers and great MSP practice. I run a division of the company that's the SourcePass Center of Excellence for Microsoft, and we are more of a Microsoft resell and Microsoft professional services firm. So we do a lot of work all around just Microsoft-focused stuff. Most of our customers are IT departments or other groups that have full IT staffs. We're coming in and augmenting their capability and providing services and licensing to them. And about a 20-person team, and we're using the heck out of Cloud Capsule. So excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, I'd love to unpack just to start here. A lot of people I don't think would, at an average MSP have, what you're terming as a center of excellence. Maybe they think of that in that sense, but it's a great, not only marketing term to describe, obviously, intense focus behind it, but would love to hear from you, kind of how that began, how you guys leverage that today for talk tracks, and then, kind of the vision of it moving forward as well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. It came about because SourcePass is this incredible company that's grown a lot by acquisition. So SourcePass, the Center of Excellence, is actually an acquisition from about 2 years ago of a company called Big Green IT. And they were a leading Microsoft CSP in the market that we identified as a great team with a great set of capabilities. They were acquired by SourcePass, and we've been rebranding them into the Center of Excellence for Microsoft. But one of the core tenets of the team is that they've kept us somewhat separate from the rest of the MSP because they want us to be agile and able to really focus. And there's a couple things that set our customers apart from our standard MSP customers. And that is most of the time we're just doing license resale and professional services. We sell quite a bit of hardware as well. But like I said, often our customers have an IT department. There's people responsible for IT that we're supporting. So kind of that co-managed idea, right, is kind of our general rule is who we're working with. But because we're small, we're agile, we're not as focused on the breadth of full IT support. We're really focused on selling licenses and helping people enable those Microsoft products. It allows us to focus. We mostly, 75, 80% of our revenue is Microsoft. So that's what we do. We sell Microsoft and then we help people enable it. Because of that, the team's able to really focus on that as a skill set, as a knowledge base, and we're able to really just lean into that area, and that's what our customers come to us for.
Yeah, and I think we've been talking with a lot of what we consider pretty progressive MSPs doing something similar in the sense of modularizing their services so that they can have, focus, bring more, intimacy. We always talked about the intimacy at scale concept when we worked together, but it was, really around how can you bring this small town feel and intimate relationship at a very large company in that sense, doing a lot of different things where you could get very distracted by obviously the new shiny object of product, or concepts that are coming out, obviously like things like AI. And certainly it'll play into Microsoft a little bit there, but makes a lot of sense. And certainly I could see a lot of efficiencies just from having that narrow focus and just having one part of the business, not have to hear all the noise of, the rest of the, pockets of chaos. We always called it that too at both companies I worked at, but there's a lot of constraints in that sense as well too. So I always felt like, you and your role, Nathan, has always been a unique one, what I would consider to be a unique unicorn of a skill set, in the sense that you're very technical, but you're very great at, explaining, the technical to business leaders at organizations. So love to have you speak on that more, just kind of, how long you've been doing that and some of the things you've learned along the way, but also what works really well right now in your conversations with business leaders.
I got my start in small business IT about 22 years ago, just working for my uncle's company. And I just started doing IT for him. And then I ended up getting hired by a break fix company, met the owner at a jury duty of all places. And I was thinking about starting my own consulting firm. I worked for them for 9 years. And I really credit that experience with building a lot of who I am as a professional. Because in the break fix world back in the early 2000s, it was just nonstop fingers in everything. I had to build servers. I had to build networks. I had to do customer service. I had to do sales. I had to do security. I had to do after hours support. I had to do billing. We were a 3-person firm. It was, you had your fingers in everything. And I think that experience of my ability to provide for my family was directly tied to my ability to interact with a customer and solve problems for them and then sell them the next solution. I'm really grateful for that experience because it built a wide breadth of experience. I understand business. I understand how decisions are made. I understand selling, I understand communicating. So really grateful for that opportunity. Learned so much in those 9 years from handling every aspect of the business. And then about 10 years ago, Dan hired me at Machine Logic and had really great opportunity to spend 5 or 6 years just nerding out, just hardcore engineer. And so really went after Azure and Microsoft and certifications and really got deep into the technical side. And eventually that worked into me being the CTO for Machine Logic and really was leading the engineering and security teams across the board. And so got a lot of deep technical experience there and then started to get some of the business acumen from having to help Dan run the business, starting to look at all those pieces. And then all that builds towards now where now I have that ability, like you said, I can walk in and I can talk to a business owner and understand how to sell, how to listen, how to solve their needs. But I think as much as I have this, this blessing of having this great experience, I think the reality is a lot of these conversations don't require an incredible amount of experience. I think you need to understand the Microsoft ecosystem and the tool sets. You need to understand best practices. So I think even keeping up with your kind of content where you're talking about, like, here's what's available. Here's how this should be set correctly. You do need to understand identity management and identity protection. And, how does Defender work? What's Defender for 365? But if you have a base level understanding of the Microsoft stack, you've got all your 900 series certs, you understand the product. I think the biggest thing is the ability to listen. Get into with a customer. What do you need? Tell me your problem. Tell me what we're solving. And then listen to that. And then, have the humility to say, if you don't know, say, hey, great, let me work on a solution for that. Or if you do have a solution, start selling that solution. But selling always comes back best from a position of empathy. Do you understand what they're solving? Can you communicate it back to them? And then when you can sell to that, I would say there's an endorphin rush from getting in the room with a customer, hearing their need, then communicating it back to them in a way that they haven't had happen before. And they look at you and go, you're the first vendor I've gotten on who actually understands what I'm asking and is solving it. There's just a real rush that happens in that moment. And there's magic that happens from the sales perspective of like, oh, you get what I'm asking for. You understand how to solve it. I trust you now. But a lot of that comes from just listening carefully and thinking creatively and having the humility to answer with, hey, give me a second. I need to work on that. Let me get back to you in a couple of days when you don't know it and not fake your way through it. All that experience is valuable, but it also comes down to just those basics of listening and communicating well and understanding the content well.
It's interesting too that how you kind of group that together, because it's definitely a thing that we're seeing as partners start to look at the next evolution of the MSP and what that engagement really looks like with customers. It's no longer about just understanding just the product, but how to put it in action in order to elicit a specific business outcome. And what we're seeing with a lot of partners is kind of what you've articulated, which is, yes, you need to listen and make sure that you're aligned with their needs and with their outcomes. But customers are looking for specific expertise. We have a lot of MSPs that are not only more embracing, advanced security, cybersecurity posture in Microsoft 365, but also looking at the next horizon of, AI enablement. And we know that with that, there's a lot to get your hands around. And so I like the idea of kind of, being able to be that expert in the room. I mean, I think what you've been able to build over, our time together at Machine Logic, but as we fast forward to now with the Center of Excellence there at SourcePass, offering up that significant expertise, subject matter expertise, that really shifts the conversation. You're no longer a generalist. And I think we see a need is going to arise with many MSPs. They don't necessarily have to build a center of excellence, but they need to come back to the idea of having a champion, of having somebody that can dig into the details a little bit further and see the business opportunity as they unpack things that are required to take that next evolutionary step.
I agree. And I think there's a big change happening too with just the turnover of our customer demographic. 10 years ago in the MSP space, in the small business space, I was selling to a CFO or a controller or a business manager or owner who didn't understand technology. And I had the answers. And they were going to go with my recommendation most of the time. They beat me up on price. Today, that conversation is with somebody who understands technology to some level. And they probably come in asking for something. And it's interesting because, as an MSP space, we've always come in saying, well, yeah, but we're a SentinelOne shop. We're a Sophos shop. We're a SonicWall shop. This is our security platform. And there's a lot of reasons we do that as MSPs, right? We need to standardize on tool sets for our efficiency and scalability and honestly for the customer experience. But it gets complicated now because they come in and go, well, that's great. I'm glad you have your favorite tool set, but I've drank the Microsoft Kool-Aid and I want Defender. And I understand what can happen here and I want Sentinel and I want all these things. And these conversations are much more complicated than they used to be, where it used to be me kind of trying to convince you of your need for things. Those still happen. I still have customers where, I guess I should probably take security seriously. I probably shouldn't have MFA on all my my devices, that sort of thing. But the other half of those conversations is, hey, I want these things. Can you provide it? And that's an interesting shift that's happened in the space as the customers have matured in their understanding. And I think AI helps that. Go throw an AI. What should I be doing on my Microsoft stack? Man, I use AI every day to answer questions about Microsoft stuff because it's so good at consolidating Microsoft's endless documentation into concise answers. Your customers can do that too. And so they're asking questions with some really good background. They understand what can be deployed. They understand, they may not technically understand it or understand all the wrinkles, but they have a level of knowledge we didn't used to have to interact with.
I also think there's a good sea change in the fact that customers are starting and partners are starting to have the conversation about managing shared risk, right? Some of this of what we've talked about for the last 10 years with cybersecurity has been very product oriented and very, hey, I have to have this set right in order to elicit the right settings and the right environment. But we kind of missed until cyber insurance really came around and pushed us in a specific direction. We weren't really managing risk. And now we're having more risk-based conversations of identifying the risk. What are we going to do to mitigate the risk? What might be a shared risk between a partner and a client? And I think AI is starting to amplify that too, right? Because we're now saying, hey, we have to look out on the horizon and say, there's all these risky factors in your data estate and in your security posture. And how do we solve that in a constructive way, in a way that you can, ingest, not only from a budget perspective, from a change management perspective. And so I think that's an interesting perspective, moving away from just the product conversation and the project conversation, but into that risk management conversation.
One of the interesting conversations I'm getting a lot is, I think it starts with risk, but it's, hey, we have our cyber insurance, our executive team, our investment company, the number of things triggering this, M&A, due diligence, et cetera, is triggering a conversation about our cyber risk. But then it quickly leads to, hey, I know I'm paying for business premium or E3 or E5, but is it properly configured? That's a really common question. And it's a really good question because, go throw E5 on a tenant and tell me how many changes you can make that contribute to your secure score. Was it like 1,500 separate settings it's paying attention to? Every time you add one of these licenses with capability, it adds that many more things that need to be properly configured. And people just don't know. They're like, I'm not an expert in this. Am I properly configured? I'm paying $57.50 a user for E5, but am I getting $57 worth of value, or is it all just sitting there unconfigured? Very, very common requests we're starting to get, and fits into that risk of like, all right, I'm paying to remediate the risk, but is the risk actually being addressed by the tool set?
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad I was going to ask that question too, because I know you've been doing a lot of engagements recently. You're just continuously over time here, and it's interesting to hear. I think that's been coming up too for my calls as well. So there's definitely some synergy there in the sense of hearing the same thing around, oh, can I maximize my investment, in this, and am I maximizing my investment in the security that we have today? And then also, those more like externally driven factors are certainly one thing, or, obviously with AI, it's more around, I just want to make sure my customer data is protected in a lot of these cases. So more business outcome driven. I see also as we move up market, people are asking very purpose-built solutions in Microsoft. Like, I need a Purview solution. I need a Defender for Cloud App solution. Sounds like obviously you're seeing the same there, but I would love to hear you kind of maybe expand on that too.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think people are researching and understanding what Microsoft can do, and it's hard. Like, we're a department that focuses on Microsoft. But man, Microsoft's a million products, right? There's 10,000 things you can do with Microsoft. And sometimes you get somebody come in and go, hey, I want Viva. It's like, well, Viva is this incredible enterprise. It could be a learning management solution, or a productivity management tool, or workplace or employee management tool. We can't all be good at everything. So it's sometimes hard to scale to the scale of Microsoft. And Purview is a great example. That's a very technical topic. If you want to go deep on some of those Purview features, that's a full-time career, understanding how to run Purview at its fully deployed scale. So you got an E5 customer wants to go deep on Purview. That's a very special skill set. And I think we're going to see that with AI. AI is going to become its own skill set. So there's all these things that feed into that. And our perspective is that we want to start with just a base level of like, hey, can we help make sure you're secure? So when you talk about AI readiness, when we started building out our approach on that, we quickly realized that before you dig into data governance and do you have DLP on and do you have sensitivity labels and your data properly in the right space, let's just start with a high level security overview. And that's where Cloud Capsule comes in really, really amazing. I'm selling it for you here, but it just gives me that ability to quickly answer that question. At a high level, do you have the basics done? And I don't want to talk about data governance until we talk about basics. If you have users without MFA, forget sensitivity labels. Let's go take care of MFA. If you don't have the right level of phishing protection on, data governance is a secondary issue, right? It's a lower priority. We always said at Machine Logic that we wanted to have a pragmatic approach to security. Security can be this deep, intellectual, really stimulating exercise of like, hey man, we got to go get ThreatLocker deployed to stop those 0 days, pivoting on that attachment that came through my email and it's executing code on my endpoint. Well, I still think the reality is if you're running a decent EDR, you're running, without admin privileges, that's such a low risk in your company. The probability that that's going to cause issues for you is so low. The probability that you're going to have business email compromise is high. So MFA and Defender for 365, they're just table stakes. Like, if you don't have that stuff configured, you're asking for trouble. And all the work you're doing with ThreatLocker is just a distraction. It's not solving the real issue, which is they're going to attack you through an OAuth connection that they got through a phish token and a lack of MFA, right? Those are the ways I'm seeing in our customers' attacks happening, not through some crazy endpoint exploit because you didn't patch OpenSSL on your Windows endpoint. Like, come on, like that's not the real world. And so your tool really helps us go back to those basics and quickly go, let's talk about high level, what needs to be addressed. Do you have the things turned on? What is your security posture? Is there low hanging fruit we can go through and address? And then we'll talk about AI readiness or Purview or data loss prevention or sensitivity labels once we've accomplished those basics.
No, that's great. It's repositioning, kind of also showcasing your value, obviously, as the advisor, the expert in that sense as well too. I know you mentioned to me last time we talked, you've been doing like around 30 assessments in the past few months, getting on calls, walking through the Cloud Capsule report. Would love to hear, it sounds like some of that might have been baked into what you just mentioned in the sense of, trends that you're seeing, but I don't know if there's, others that you could speak to there as far as like, security trends that are gaps that you're seeing over and over again within those that you typically try to highlight and what that talk track looks like.
I'm doing 4 or 5 Cloud Capsule reviews a week with my customers. We certainly will sell Cloud Capsule reviews, especially to customers that just come to us and say, we want a security assessment. I'm going to bundle that into a paid 365 assessment. And we might bundle it with a tool like a Block 64 or something else, or maybe some of our own internal assessments. So we'll sell it. But a lot of our Cloud Capsule assessments right now are just us driving engagement with our customers. Because we aren't the full IT department, we're not the managed service provider. A lot of our customers, we have to work to maintain that intimate relationship. They've got an IT department. They've got their plate full. I need to have a reason to be adding value. And Cloud Capsule becomes a really easy thing to do. Just to say, hey, here's my Calendly link. Go grab 45 minutes on my calendar and we'll do a free 365 assessment. And all of a sudden, customers I can't get to engage are like, I'm in. I want that data point. That'll help me with my conversation with my boss. I got an audit coming up. I'll take every data point I can give. 45 minutes is enough. 30 minutes is not enough to get through a Cloud Capsule assessment. Some of them run an hour. I love the 45 minutes. It gives people 15 minutes back. But 30 minutes is clearly not enough in my experience. I always run out of time. So we just have them hit Calendly and schedule 45 minutes. And then I get on with the customer and the account rep. We often use your I don't remember what you call it, but I'm able to send them the OAuth link at the time of the call. I'm not authenticating for them. A lot of my customers, I may have creds, but adding an OAuth to their tenant is not within things I'm allowed to do, right? I'm helping them. I'm assisting them. So if I add something to their tenant, did I follow their change management and their security policies? I don't know. So I have to be very careful with that. So we just give them the link and have them go accept the link. It happens at the beginning of the call. It takes 2 minutes. And all of a sudden the data is populated. 5 minutes later. Big fan of using Microsoft Teams for this. Go turn on your AI transcript, because almost every time I'm going back and reviewing stuff I talked about, it creates that great action item list. And if you want to even go further, you turn on the AI, not just the meeting recap, but the meeting notes. I don't know if you've played with that, but it's kind of the next level of recap, and it's detailed notes. And both of those are really helpful for this because they move quickly. You get into this and you just drive through. And I just go in order of the portal. I start at the top. We talk about Secure Score. We talk about how Secure Score is a really great data point, but it's also it has to be taken with a grain of salt. If you're not running Defender, your score is going to look really bad because there's a lot of Defender settings that are by default highlighted. So do we need to go clean some of that up, go run through that? And I don't spend a lot of time in that. I much more say, hey, there's some great recommendations. If we see anything really glaring, we'll add it. Oftentimes that's a step in our time and material SOW that generally gets generated from this, is I'm going to collect action items throughout the scan, take those and give those to the team that creates our quotes and say, hey, we think this is a 20-hour, security improvement project. Do it time and materials. Here's the 10 objectives we'd like to accomplish in that time. And so often one is, hey, let's go clean up your low-hanging fruit on your Secure Score. A lot of times just doing a little bit of cleanup in there and just looking at it, you can drive some score improvement just from saying, yeah, not applicable. Oh, this is an easy thing. Go check this box. Oh, I have this covered with another tool. And all of a sudden your Secure Score improves. But I don't spend a lot of time in the assessment. And then we talk through the whole level of the cybersecurity insurance. And that's really good. That's a really good opportunity to talk high level of, hey, what is insurance companies looking for? What is your M&A company, your due diligence, your bank looking for to understand your risk? And of course, the two things you can't cover there are backup and security awareness training. So it's an opportunity for me to sell those two tools. Hey, do you have these tools in place? We go through and we kind of talk at a high level of that. And then it's an opportunity to go talk about the CIS. And that's also something I can't get sucked into, right? Because you could spend 2 hours talking through CIS results. So I try to give them a high level highlight of what CIS is and what maybe the first two controls show under implementation group 1. And just we go look at them, we talk about them. Like, hey, we can improve your security posture by deleting devices that haven't checked in 45 days. That's a really good step to take. And we highlight a couple things, and then I refer to the fact that I'm going to send them a spreadsheet with 532 tabs in it. I don't know how many tabs it is, like 47, but it's great. It's amazing. I say, I'm going to send you all this data. You can look through it in detail later. But this is an approach. And I always say, one good way to leverage this is we could start like a monthly engagement of looking through the CIS and starting to slowly tweak your security posture, find non-disruptive changes, find low-hanging fruit, start to really build a concerted effort to drive your security posture, not from a purely, here's the things we want to do from a Microsoft perspective, but from a framework perspective. Then we jump into each section. And that's where we really start to uncover the opportunities, right? The first section is all about users. You're talking through what do your global admins look like? What's your MFA look like? Almost every customer has dozens and dozens of dormant users they need to clean up. That's a really common thing. Almost every customer has hundreds of devices they need to clean up. 1,500, 1,800 day old devices. So these are really common things we end up talking about. But that's often hey, we recommend you go through the spreadsheet and clean this up. We might help them with it as part of the, time and material quote. But most of the time, they don't want help with that. They know what they want to do there. But it's great because it's a comment I get all the time is the way you guys present the data is a way that's very difficult to get in the portal. Can you give me a list of how long it has been since people have logged in? I don't know. Can I get that in the portal? I don't know. I haven't tried in a while. Probably not easy. So you're giving these reports that make it really easy. Here's all your licensed shared mailboxes. Here's all your dormant mailboxes. Just getting all this data. We often spend quite a bit of time on the email side, licensed shared mailboxes, but more importantly, the DMARC, DKIM, SPF, that whole area is a really key area. Obviously, that's become something that Microsoft and Google and Yahoo are starting to support and to require. And so a lot of customers are missing one of those pieces. Often it's DMARC. And so that's a really quick, easy win. We'll often say, hey, let's get you a DMARC tool. Let's solve this. But also sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, go create those two DNS records and get DKIM going. It's going to solve a lot of problems for you. Then we get into the Defender for Office 365, which I think is an incredible product and is often misconfigured. It's just missing settings. And part of that is, Microsoft adds settings every 6 months. And you set it up 2 years ago and you're missing the newer safety tips or the newer action items or the new file type filters or whatever. And so we'll drive some action off of that. If they don't have it configured, we'll end up selling them a full Defender for Office 365 configuration. That's a product we sell. We'll quote that. We'll knock that out, get it fully configured. And that's a great opportunity just to drive a really tangible outcome for them. And then we get into the devices, and that gets more complicated because now you're starting to talk about, are you running Intune? Are you running Defender? What do you want to be doing? How is it configured? Are you running BitLocker? And it's really interesting. I had one last week where he's like, oh, we on purpose don't run BitLocker. It breaks things sometimes. I'm like, I think you're running from 10-year-old data. Yeah, 10 years ago, BitLocker was a pain, but we run BitLocker everywhere. BitLocker is pretty bulletproof. And if you're pulling the keys, it's pretty rare you run into issues. Oh, no, we can't do it. So these are the interesting things it exposes. You get to have a conversation about what's your posture, what's your plan. And then I can get action items out of this. Oh, they really want to move to Defender for Endpoint. Okay, that's a project. They really want to get Intune rolled out. That's a project. Let's do a standardized Intune rollout. They need help with how to tune those things up. Then we get into more of the policy area, and that's where then we start talking about, hey, what's your conditional access? What's your MFA? Which users aren't included? Why? Very commonly in my space, because these are co-managed environments, MFA is a big gap. They've got MFA on some of their users. A lot of it's legacy MFA. They still have SMS and email MFA. Almost nobody's turned on FIDO2 MFA. Very few people have Defender for Windows Hello for Business enabled. So there's a lot of talking points there. But it also tends to be, yeah, we tried MFA, but the executive team hated the disruption, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's an area that is going to yield a lot of opportunity, because I'm seeing, just as anecdotally, the phishing attacks are ramping up even this year. And I'm seeing more and more credential harvesting and token stealing. You did a whole session on token stealing. That's a thing. That's real. We're seeing that, where we had a customer and they had a token stolen on a fully MFA'd account. Now, it was at the authenticator, so it wasn't FIDO2, but yeah, that's real. That happens. They stole the token through a evil Gen X layer, and then they put an OAuth app on top of that, and they were running all their data exfiltration from the API layer, and they had a SOC in place, and it took the SOC 20 minutes to catch it. So they had all the pieces correct, but it's a more advanced attack. It bypassed it, and in that 20 minutes, they had gotten 3,000 emails out of the mailbox, right? So this is like these situations where, like, this is stuff we were talking about 2 years ago. Like, this is coming. What's here? It's real. This is happening in the wild. And so, you just work your way through that. I really love the enterprise application section. It's a really great opportunity to show them some of those apps that people don't really look at. And so from that, now we're 30 minutes into the call, 40 minutes into the call. I've now called out on the call, even to the point where often Copilot picks it up, 5 or 6 different things that we really should pick to fix. And then I go take those back to our team, and we quote that as a time and material project. Now, I think there's an opportunity as we grow our practice here to say, hey, this is our standardized approach for these things. And as we do more of those, I think it's going to turn out to be, hey, every customer, we're doing a DMARC review and an MFA review, Defender for 365 hardening. And we'll end up saying almost every customer needs these 5 steps, and we're getting close to that. Or you could take it to the next level and do a full-on programmatic hardening, which we also have access to as well, and say, hey, we're going to take your tenant and we're going to take it to the next level. That tends to be more disruptive. And so for a lot of our customers, I'm really looking for the low-hanging wins and to show them improvement. I always send them the data afterwards, export all the data, and send it right after the call. It's a value add, it's a leave behind, and it's really valuable to them. And then we follow up with some next steps. But it's, we don't always get a project out of the assessment, but what it does is it does drive that engagement with the customer where they know they can get answers from us, they can get an assessment from us. And when they do circle back and go, I really want to fix some of those things he talked about, they're going to come directly to us. They're going to know that we have the answers. And it really builds that kind of competence in relationship with the customer without kind of being scary. I work really hard not to beat anybody up. And I think that's an important thing to say. It's like, hey, your secure score is 45. On a lot of unmanaged tenants that haven't put work on it, that's common. 40 to 50 is a really common score. We can improve this. You have room to grow, but I'm not going to kick your butt. You've got 120% of your, 85% of your users are dormant users. You never delete users. I've seen that before. I've seen some insane numbers of dormant users. I've seen some insane numbers of dormant devices that need to be cleaned up. So I think it's really important that we're also sensitive about our bedside manner there, because I think you can really expose some people in that call, and your tone will drive what they're feeling in response. If you drive a bunch of shame, good luck selling an outcome from that, right? So it's really important to drive that right tone with those engagements.
Yeah, I think that's such an important piece because, I've been doing a lot of these too, or hopping on calls with our partners to walk through it for with the customer as well, just because I'm more versed with it at this point than them just kind of getting started. But, there's that fine balance of obviously you want to make them feel empowered and that you're a great provider for going and fulfilling these things that will help their business and their business outcomes and drive those home, whether that's, externally driven because they're getting an audit or because they, are part of regulatory compliance that need to go in and do this versus, we want to make sure our customer data is protected, right? It's more of the business outcome that might trigger that. And I'm glad you found, good ways to target kind of farm existing clients that, is a touch point with stakeholders that can understand that. But I've done the same thing too. I've kind of had to go from way too light in the sense that I wasn't kind of explaining, the risk enough, because there's things like risky users that we see or suspicious apps that are, really set up after compromise that you really want to drive home the urgency. Like I would go look at this right after the call, as far as like you need to pay attention to this, but not put, this intense fear on them that they've done something wrong or that their account's breached, because you're not saying that. But if I saw that, with the knowledge of the Microsoft ecosystem, it's like that's a leading indicator of compromise. Like I would definitely want to make sure I understood what all was involved with that. So it's been walking a fine balance of, giving more direct feedback in that sense versus being a little bit too lackadaisical. Because I've had some of those where I walk through it and I explain those things or I showed them those things and they're like, oh, I may look at this in a couple of weeks, after we assess it. And it's like, I wouldn't do that, that type of conversation. So it's an interesting balance because you're obviously not playing off of FUD and, trying to drive sales based off of fear of things that could happen, but more explaining obvious business risk and then the follow-up. We were just talking about this before we hit record, but, we've been trying to build out more of this talk track around, hey, if this is, you see this in the tenant, this is a trigger to talk about, this business risk. So just presenting all of the things to them, with some outcome-driven follow-ups of like, we know, this is what we would recommend, which provides your advisory to that, but doesn't play into those fear tactics as well too. So there's a few of them, that always work out really well, that we see in talking about storytelling, in the sense of, we've seen this, in this environment, this is how the attacker got in, this is how this happened based off that, and this is how they fulfilled that. I think that puts a little bit more emphasis beyond just, this is what could happen to your business, that real life example. And more specific you get, the better. But it's a hard art, to try to fulfill with the time constraint also that you have too, of that 45 minutes to try to get that deliverable out of there. But we had another customer that also had a lot of clients that were using, just the basic tier of block hours, for support. And he was able to leverage, just a basic talk track of, hey, while I was fixing this issue that you submitted a ticket for, I saw these concerning things in your Microsoft environment. Love to hop on a call, to talk to you more about the risk, if you're open to it. It'll, just click a link here. So there's definitely a lot of different areas, I think, from a campaigning, if you will, perspective to try to drive people to the calls. But it sounds like you're not really having any trouble doing that because most of these personas you're talking to are pretty interested in getting that done. So it's just to clarify too, that's just, hey, we can run a free security assessment on your Microsoft tenant. Are you interested?
It's also a great pre-sales tool. Get somebody in, maybe you're in a competitive environment where you're like, hey, I got 3 vendors who are bidding on the same, project or license transfer. Hey, as part of our quoting process, do you mind if we run a free assessment? We'll give you all the results. You'll get the results we get. We'll walk you through it, show you what we find, but it'll help us understand the project. And all of a sudden, these customers are like, man, that'd be amazing. If I'm going to quote out this big project, the more data I have, the better. So I'm giving them something truly tangible that they need, which is understanding of their environment. But it makes me a partner that they have good feelings for, right? Like, and in a competitive bid process, that can be a thing. Hey, we're all selling Microsoft licensing, and Microsoft gives us, depending on your distributor relationship, 10 to 20 points to work with, right? So are we winning on the cost of our project or the cost of Microsoft, or are we all about in the same ballpark? And can I give something that makes me somebody they go, yeah, but those guys gave me something extra, and I'm confident in their ability to understand what I want to finish, what I want to get accomplished, what outcome I need. And I think it's a great pre-sales tool in that same way.
I also think it's interesting that, kind of going back to your methodology that you're following as you do these assessments, that it kind of rings back to what we focused on a lot of Machine Logic. You and I, is so many of these things come down to what you had said previously, like, are we doing the basics? And so much of that posture really comes down to something that the MSP community has embraced, but not fully executed, which is really tight onboarding and offboarding policy, right? And whether you're using an RPA tool or not, or whether you're just following a really well manicured checklist, I think it's interesting to hear you, even as you're dealing with much larger tenants, much larger co-managed opportunities. To some extent, it comes down to some of those basics still. Are you onboarding people properly with the right access controls of MFA and conditional access? As users and devices get deprovisioned, are you actually deprovisioning them properly and then putting and resetting things? And that reduces so much risk inside of a tenant. And it's just interesting because as we look at, security assessments in general, a lot of partners will go, oh, that's a big mountain to climb. It's going to create a lot of complexity in my day and whatnot. But really, at the end of the day, it does come back down to the basics, right? It is a simple, crawl, walk, run methodology of how to attack, security assessments and improvements, even in a large tenant, just one step at a time. And sometimes it just
absolutely
that onboarding.
Yeah, because it's intimidating. Okay, I'm 500 settings away from where I should be in Microsoft 365. That's daunting. It's overwhelming. And that 200 of those settings are going to be incredibly disruptive if you check them. Go throw some, application control policies in Defender and tell me how the next week's support desk looks, right? There's some really disruptive moments, but you don't need application control policies day one. You need MFA and the things we've talked about already. And so you can really step your way there. The other thing I think that's really interesting about the opportunity in the market is Microsoft has really staged us to succeed in this. And, we love Microsoft and we hate Microsoft, right? They drive us nuts. We love them. Being a partner is painful at times, but we love their products. Business Premium is just this incredible value. I don't think people understand enough how much value is in that $22 SKU. If you try to go build it off of like enterprise SKUs, you're spending $45, $50 for that SKU. It's incredible. And I've actually used Cloud Capsule to sell Business Premium a number of times because I went in and I said, oh man, you got Business Basic. Let me show you the 4 pages in here we are not even going to touch because you can't touch them. You have no conditional access. You have no Intune. You have no Defender. You have no Defender for 365. Let me show you all the things we could do and talk you through the value prop and how most of my customers have this in place because they're on Business Premium. People go, wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. But the other gap there is a gap in the Microsoft licensing ecosystem, and it's for the mid-market. And it's all those customers on E3. Because E3 is a really great product, but it's not as good a product as Business Premium. It has actually some gaps. And the big one is it's missing Defender for 365. And so that Defender for Office 365 is a big value from the email filtering perspective. And so that's the first gap. But the second gap I'm finding is a lot of the mid-market companies go, great, well, I really want Entra ID P2, right? I want that ability to do automated risk management in Entra, that risky user and all of the automated flows around that. It's really important to them. Well, that's like a $9 user SKU. It's an expensive SKU to add. But Microsoft enabled E5 security add-on for E3, for O365 E3, for Business Premium in the last couple months. March-ish, I'm not sure exactly when it landed. But it's an insane opportunity. That's an incredible SKU for $12. If you're M365 E3, you turn that on, you get all the Office 365 Defender for Office 365 features instantly. It's all there. So now you're getting that $2 SKU, and you're getting the $9 Entra ID SKU, and you're getting all the rest of the goodness that comes with it, the additional endpoint and Defender and all these other capabilities that are incredibly valuable. It's $12. So for $34 a month, or give or take the 5% that we're paying for monthly fees now, and like blah, 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 all the licensing paying, $35 a month approximately, you've got an enterprise class security suite. And I think partners need to understand the opportunity there to say, hey, I can check so many boxes for you with one tool. And, I think there's a lot of value in the Microsoft ecosystem. I know a lot of MSPs, they love their proof point, and they love their Sentinel-1, and they got their best of breed favorite tools. But man, when you get the Microsoft ecosystem fully engaged, like if you have Defender running on endpoints, guess what? It actually detects phishing, not just when the email's coming through, not only with risky user detection, but it'll actually pay attention to the URLs in the emails. And I've seen it catch phishing attacks from the endpoint where it's watching what you clicked on. And it's another layer of heuristics. And the more they add in AI, the more they add this ability to take that standardized data that's in the Microsoft security graph and leverage it. I think we're going to find more and more that the piecemeal security thing just doesn't hold up. Now, there's times and places. There's an argument for, hey, I want a non-Microsoft EDR. Great, I get that. I think if that's your perspective, then I think you look at a Huntress or a Blackpoint Cyber on top of Defender. And I think that combo accomplishes your goal, which is somebody else watching Microsoft. There's just an opportunity there of like that full stack is incredible. And with E5 security, it's approachable. You're not talking $65 a user, $60 a user. You're talking $35 a user for this incredible stack of security capabilities. And people need to understand where they can leverage that and how much value it adds.
Yeah, I get really excited about this topic because, I see a trend of people more and more, moving into that stack and trying to standardize, moving off of even traditional RMM for Intune, but still having, a screen, remote connection tool as an example of that because it doesn't handle that well. So there's still some gaps. We've been talking about Intune for years over RMM. But yes, the E5 add-on, mid-market's great because it exceeds that 300 cap of BP, but it can even be bolted on to BP. And Microsoft continues to add to that. Most recently, they added the automatic attack disruption capabilities that were in E5 to Business Premium. And that's super huge because, that's where you get the aggregate data of all those security tools working and communicating together without having to stitch that together yourself or pump it into a SIM and maintain that over time. Like Microsoft's doing that for you and can automatically respond to alerts and start to break them down. So it's really powerful. And they also just introduced, token theft from P2 into P1. Protections. Most recently, I think that was yesterday or today or something like that. But there's a lot there. I think that it helps in the customer conversations too. We had another MSP talk to us about helping with TCO, but also just like right sizing their services. Hey, actually, you'll be paying more with us, but we're going to save you this much in tool set costs. So it's actually going to be net positive. As an example of that. But I totally agree. There's gaps that you'll see as an MSP that you can overcome with other third parties that I think are really trusted, like Huntress or Blackpoint,
Sure.
To help you manage the noise, because there's still going to be noise in all of those, and there's still going to be a lot of false positives that you're going to have support, especially if you don't have your own SOC internally or internal security team. But you can't get away from the amount of value. It's defense in depth, not best of suite, in that regard, or best of breed in this sense. But yeah, I think there's a ton in that sense. But one thing as we start to wind down here, I know we're coming up on time, but just had two more sections I wanted to cover with you, and then or just one actually, and then do a rapid fire little question at you for the fun of the end here. But one of the things, as SVP in leading this team of the Centers of Excellence, obviously you have to be able to scale this solution, this practice, out to other team members in the sense of being able to get on customer calls, or obviously the fulfillment, is more of something that I think is more readable. It's not easy by any means, but it's definitely, I would say, more channeled. With what you can do there, because you have skill sets that can fulfill, hey, we can go, implement DLP policies after you sell it. But the selling motion and the talk track with the customer is often the hard part. So I would love to hear, how you're thinking about that, from a scalability perspective, and, how you're kind of approaching that too.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have it fully baked. I think part of it is I'm trying to get more consistent with how I run it myself, right? I'm getting a better run book. And I know you guys are producing some content that fits very closely with how I'm doing it, kind of in parallel, and love collaborating with you guys on that. But I think getting better at like all these little tricks. Okay, make sure you got Teams recording. Make sure you send out those results right after. I'm learning I have to write down my thoughts immediately because I jump to the next meeting and I forget the little subtle details. So, hey, what are the 10 things you saw that Copilot may or may not have pulled out of the conversation? So I have those ready so that I can really get better at handing it off to the SOW team and the team that's going to quote it and execute. They know how to do all this stuff. I just have to give them the data. So I'm needing to get better and more organized in how I execute these. So I think that's the first step, is we're trying to get more of a standardized quote, standardized quoting process, standardized, data collection and opportunity collection process. And my guess is that's going to end up being maybe even a checklist of like, hey, did they need this? Did they need that? And you're checking as you go, and then you're filling in the things that aren't on the standard list of these are the 20 things we do for everybody. So as we go, I'm building more and more of that. Next, I've got to get some more people qualified to do it. And I have 2 or 3 people on my team that can do it. From a technical and a people skills perspective, because we talked earlier, you do need that ability to, you don't want your Uber nerd on that, because all of a sudden your Uber nerd, if they're not people skills, they're like, I can't believe you don't have MFA, or yeah, this is terrible, or yeah, you're screwed, you're probably pwned already, like these, that sometimes your Uber nerds just don't have that sales mindset. And then on the flip side, some of your sales guys just don't have answers to questions. Well, why do I have risky users? I don't know. And so there's a couple ways to solve it. If I'm not available, the combination of maybe an account manager and the Uber nerd can be a good combination. Maybe you find 2 people that can fill in those gaps. It's run by the account manager, but they're deferring to the nerd for the more technical conversations. And I think we may do some of that. But I have a couple other people where I'm just trying to include them in as many calls as I can so they can watch me do it. Because I don't think there's a magic to this that can't be transmitted. It's watch me do it. You're going to learn and you're going to see. If you don't understand something, maybe we push you to go get a 900 series cert so you understand the Microsoft ecosystem better. Maybe we do drive you to do more education, but just keep watching and asking questions. And what I need to do soon is, as some of those people have been through 5 or 10 or 15 of those with me, say, how would you like to run the next one? And I'll be on the call and I can back you up so I can start to scale it. Because you're absolutely right. It's kind of there's a special skill set that I have natively, but none of it is magic that I can't train other people to do. And it is the next step from a scalability perspective, is to be able to make it so that we can run these. I'd love to get to the point where we hit every customer at least once a year with a Cloud Capsule scan. A lot of our customers maybe quarterly. You guys are building in some of the change logging and some of the posture measurement. And so then we can turn it into, hey, you really see the value of this tool. We're going to sell it to you as a subscription. You're going to pay for the tool. You're going to have access. And we're going to be in it once a month. And we're going to go check boxes. Or we're going to go find improvement. And we want to demonstrate improvement over time. And there's a lot of value in that to customers for validating the work they're doing. Hey, look, boss, we made some improvement in the last 3 months. Let me show you. That's a big win. But I think scaling that is going to require me to just get more organized and continue to take what I do naturally and turn it into something I can share. No,
it's super hard. I think, depending on that, there's that obvious skill set gap that you have to overcome. But even for, people such as yourself, and I'd say I can speak to the business side decently well too, but it's hard to even just channel that into next steps. And, when you're looking at 150 data points, right, it's like, well, how do you repeat that process to somebody else that has such variance in client environments, and their goals are going to be different, and being able to create a template off of that, if you will, or a blueprint is next to impossible. That's also why I think we're seeing a break in traditional managed services, because a lot of people are trying to blueprint that. And everybody, from the client perspective, their needs are unique. And it's like, well, we can try to, save ourselves time, to your point earlier about standardizing on your tool stack to build operational efficiency, to hopefully drive better customer experience. But what we end up doing is not listening as much in certain cases to what the customer needs, or tailoring it, to fit the needs of their business. But we ended up doing it anyway. So we just kind of break down, on what we're doing in that sense, which also supports the idea of standardizing to the Microsoft security stack, because they're going to save cost. It's more simplistic. You don't have to deal with all the stitching of tools on front end and back end of operations. And then that can get you into a better repeat process. But saying that all, knowing that's not a click of a button or an easy switch, by any means, it's a ongoing process. And I think a lot of us are just beginning that journey of doing more consultancy like services and advisory versus the traditional managed service offer. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. So as we wind down here, just going to go into some rapid fire questions, not many, but only parameters or rules would be just keep it, as short as you can in certain senses, but just some random questions here to close us out. First question I have for you is AI is going to replace tier 1 help desk, true or false?
True.
Okay. What's the best advice you got early in your career?
That every email is better with less sentences. So write your email and then see if you can eliminate 30% of the words, and it's going to be a better email.
Nice. Best AI prompt you maybe are using on a recurring basis?
Oh, that's a great question. I love Copilot, but I think ChatGPT does it well too. I love its ability to help me understand Microsoft licensing. I'm going to live and breathe this stuff, and I can't freaking keep up. What are the features in E5 security? What can I bolt E5 security on? And of course, you got to be careful with hallucination. But man, generally, you go ask Copilot a licensing question and how I combine things, or I got to add this obscure Purview feature. What's the cheapest way to do it? The results it gives are incredible, and it saves a ton of time. So that's probably my favorite prompt right now, is just licensing questions in the Microsoft space.
Nice. Yeah, I actually used that the other day. I took a screenshot of something in the portal and I passed it into GPT and I said, is this available in Business Premium or E1, Entra P1? And it was like, no, it's not. And this is the documentation. I was like, wow, that's incredible. What's your favorite Microsoft product you really geek out about if you had to pick one?
I think right now it is Copilot. I know that's the token answer, but it's really helpful. I use it to search for emails, and I spend a lot of time in it, and it's it's really good. Really, really impressive.
What's the biggest customer objection you get from moving forward on projects? Hopefully it's not the BitLocker one, but what would be summarize it there?
That's an interesting question. I think budget can be a common one. Hey, we don't want to spend the money right now, or we're not sure. But probably a bigger one is it disruptive? That still drives a lot of decisions. Can you do this project without disrupting users? And security and user productivity are often at odds, right? As once you get it settled, it's good, but oftentimes the process of rolling it out is disruptive. So I'd say probably user disruption is the biggest challenge to work through and to scope and communicate.
That's a great one. I love that. And the last one here, are the Denver Broncos going to make the playoffs this year?
Absolutely. They are. They made the playoffs last year. I think they're going to be better. I'm high on the Broncos. I think they're going to win maybe 13 games, 12 games, and win the division. So watch out, Chiefs.
Oh, whoa. Was there? Yeah, some more picks there. So awesome.
I also wanted to just give a quick shout out to Nathan. If you haven't caught his Demystifying Microsoft series, which is available on a variety of platforms, including LinkedIn and YouTube and whatnot. Definitely check it out. I think you guys have just been great at creating some content around what we've talked about today a little bit, kind of unpacking it, demystifying things, and kind of how to move forward in a complex world that Microsoft is. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that show just briefly and where you're headed with that content.
Yeah, it kind of started out of, I did a podcast for about 9 months with a friend about a year ago, which was just really fun for me. I really enjoy that outlet. There's a creative itch that I like to scratch with those conversations. And it ended up life circumstances changed, and him and I both didn't have time to maintain the podcast because podcasts are a bit of work. But from a business perspective, we kept on talking about how we have all this knowledge about the Microsoft ecosystem, and there's so much changing. Licensing rules and products and new features, and how do you navigate these things? And so really it's an effort to drive visibility for our customers into those topics. Here, let me explain. We're in the middle of a series around Azure cost management. It's kind of simple, but it's got a lot of subtle details. So we're doing a 3-part series on how we approach that. And so it's working really well to just be a quick outlet for the content and the knowledge. My marketing team loves it because I just get on and I record a call, and they've got video to cut up and take the transcript and can do blog articles. So it's a really great way to build content. And I think it helps with the brand, and it's gratifying for me. I just enjoy doing it. I really like getting in there and going, hey, I'm going to go record a half-hour video. It doesn't take a lot of prep. I'll throw another tool I am using. You asked about favorite tools. This is not a Microsoft tool. Google Notebook LM. Big plug for that. If you haven't played with it, if you're researching a topic, go check out Google Notebook LM. Go through a couple YouTube videos and a couple blog articles about a topic that you don't have time to get through. I don't have time in my life to go watch 45-minute YouTube videos. But Google LM will take that content, turn it into a 20, 30-minute podcast. And I do a lot of podcasting prep there where I know a lot of details about a product, but I want to dig deeper. I want to understand a subtle detail. I'll go pull some articles about that, throw that in Google Notebook, go listen to that podcast. And that's a lot of my prep. Content ends up coming out really well. But yeah, we've been enjoying getting to build those videos. We're doing a couple a week. I've got our VP of Microsoft Alliance. He runs our Microsoft relationship, Wade Walker, doing videos about just updates on Microsoft. So just weekly, what's new in licensing or features or Microsoft incentives we can help people unlock. And Nick, you're kind of some of the inspiration on that. I was thinking the other day, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, I guess. You've created such great content for so many years. That this is just kind of a offshoot of that, of it's fun to do and it's not hard to do. And I think people are always looking for more content. So why don't we throw some stuff out there that's helpful? Yeah, no,
and those short videos on that and other topics are super helpful, especially as you're talking to customers like, hey, you can reference these couple of videos here too. But you also threw some of my content into the Google Notebook LM and shared it with me. And it is extremely wild, the output there of just the manner, the oohs and ahs, even of the conversation, people talking about it is they explained it better than I did in the article of what they were talking about. It makes it more relatable because it's just a conversation. So I think we'll link these resources in the description of the videos when we publish these as well too, just for help there. Any other plugs before we close out today, or anything you'd like to share?
No, I appreciate you having me on the show. Like Dan said, check us out on LinkedIn or YouTube, SourcePath Center of Excellence for Microsoft. Try to keep some content on there that's pretty relevant. And thanks for your tool. It's been an incredible asset for us, and I really love using it. And I look forward to hearing from other people on what they're getting out of it. And thanks, Nick, for all your content. Like that episode on token theft you did recently, just incredibly valuable. We need it. Like I said, it's common. It's a thing. We need people like you I don't have the time to go research stuff like that. You researched at a level and produced in a way where I could learn from your 20, 30 hours of labbing and testing and really knowing that content. So thank you for that. I know you do that. You've done that for years, just as a outreach, and it's really does so much for the community. So thanks for producing all that content.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no. It's super supportive, and I'm happy to hear it. We really appreciate the partnership as well too. And, just all the feedback that you've been able to provide us so far. So it's been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nathan. It's always great to connect and tap your brain. Nick said it really well. You are a unicorn in the industry. Your knowledge is so deep. So we really appreciate you sharing that with our viewers and our partners. But thanks again for joining us. And thanks everybody for another partner spotlight session. Stay tuned for the next one. We've got some great stuff in the works, but have a wonderful day, and thanks for using Cloud Capsule.
Okay, guys, that's everything I had for you today. Definitely comment below with any questions you had about this conversation. If you want to be featured in one of our partner spotlights or these interviews, definitely check out the contact form. I'll link in the video description here as well. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week.